everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a show dedicated to the amazing survivors of child sexual abuse across the globe. I'm Gloria Masters. I'm the one that brings this to you every week, and I'm so honoured to have people who are prepared to come on the show and talk about their life stories and experiences with child sexual abuse. If not us, then who? It's got to be discussed. So, as with all shows, there is a trigger warning, and this is so that if you, wonderful person that you are, ends up feeling upset or anxious through watching this, please do stop. Go to the show notes below and you'll be directed to some resource and support. In the meantime, have I got a guest for you? You're welcome. His name is Stuart Lord. He joins us all the way from Boulder, Colorado. He's a survivor, an educator, a social justice advocate, and I know there's more because, hey, there always is. So welcome to the show, Stuart.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So you're not going to get away with just that. We're now
Thanks for doing this work. I mean, you're like a champion for all of us, and so I really appreciate that you are using your time and your talent to allow people to tap into something that's very, very important and creates greater awareness. So I really want to thank you for your compassion and your love and your courage to do this work. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Stuart. You're very welcome. And, you know, it's such an honour. I sit among all our beautiful survivors watching, and hello, lovely ones to you. So, Stuart, you know, thinking about you and what happened to you as a child, it would be really helpful for us to understand, you know, what you went through as little or as much as you feel comfortable to share.
So as I was thinking a few minutes ago, that what you're allowing us to do is to speak and to share our stories, because we couldn't do that as children. We didn't feel like we had a safe place. We were threatened. And so, I can share this story without that fear. And that is just to be able to do that is a gift in itself. So thank you for gifting me that opportunity. When I think about, you asked the question, how did it start? I was 11 years old. I joined the Boy Scouts of America. And today there are over 81,000 men and boys who have filed a complaint in the Boy Scouts because of sexual abuse in the United States. And mine began when I joined the Boy Scout troop. My assistant scoutmaster, Lonnie Barnes, and I can say his name because it did happen, and he also confessed that it happened. And so, and I can talk about that at the end, but it was so much, I've been healed from his confession. But it all began because I never believed that he would confess. I was in the Boy Scouts, and so I joined, and he befriended me. I guess at the point, I didn't know I was being groomed, but I was being groomed. And so he started giving me lots of good attention, and then picking me up to take me to Boy Scout meetings, and then bringing me home from Boy Scout meetings. And then about 2 months after I joined the Boy Scouts, I became a paper boy. And lo and behold, who was on my paper route was my assistant scoutmaster.
No.
So not only did he have access through me to Boy Scouts, but also I had to go to his house and deliver his paper. And then I noticed I was getting large tips. And all that at first was like, I'm getting attention, I'm getting tips. He's asking questions about me. And then he finds out that I'm in the foster care system and I don't have a father because my foster father was deceased. And so he asked me, can he come meet my foster mother? So what do I say? I say, absolutely. You can meet her, because why not? Here's a male that is looking after me and trying to be positive. He was a school teacher, an English school teacher. So he had access to lots of children and lots of boys. And so I began to learn and see the signs of what was going on later on. So, but he innocently he meets my parents or my mom and tells her he's going to look after me and take me to more meetings and pick me up. And there began the access he had to me, full access. So started when he'd take me to Boy Scout meetings and then pick me up and take me home, and then started touching my leg and telling me how much he cares, how much he loves, and then embracing me and all that kind of stuff, and making me feel very, very special. And that led to acts of me having to do things with him. He started, my pants come down, his pants comes down, and then I remember one day I was at his house after a meeting, and he asked me to, he gave me something to drink. It was alcohol, and so I guess he, at that point he made me drink or offered the alcohol to me, so I drank. And I'm around, this is, I'm 11, 12 years old. And then I wake up from that and he's on top of me. And then I realize that, I think about, it's interesting how when these things happen, you block them out, or you tell yourself a story, or you allow these things to happen and you are not present. And so I wake up from that incident, he's on top of me, and I realized that he had penetrated me and he had sex with me.
Yeah.
And that was,
He'd raped you, Stuart. He'd raped
yes, yes, yeah. I'm going to say he raped me.
you. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, he raped me. And then I remember, because after he raped me, he tells me, he gives me a brand new coat and gives me all these things and tells me not to tell anyone. And then, I'm confused at what's going on and how to respond. But I knew internally that something that happened was not right. It wasn't. So I was living like, this happens, I can't say anything, because if I do say something, what are people going to say about me?
Yeah.
How am I going to be judged?
Yeah.
And he sets it up to where no one's going to believe me, and tells me if I tell anybody, he's going to kill me. Or better yet, he told me that if I told anyone, my twin brother would be separated from me.
Yeah.
And I'm in a foster home. My parents give me up, and he tells me he is my godfather. He used the term, "I'm your godfather," and then goes to my mom and becomes my godfather. And then when, several times on the home from Boy Scout Boy Scout meetings, we would go to Orchard Beach, and he would, yes, I guess, rape me or have sex with me, and introduce me to other men. And that was my journey with him. And I began to be afraid of the dark. I couldn't sleep at night, or monsters would come. And the only place I knew, in my home, in my room, in my bed, I didn't feel safe. The only place I felt safe growing up and as going to Boy Scout camp and being away from him. But he would take me to camp, and on the way to camp, we would have to have sex. And he'd pick me up from camp and tell me how much he missed me. We would have to have sex. He would tutor me and help me write my papers, but I would have to perform and do things for that.
You were trained.
And when I think about when I got the courage one day. I'm in ninth grade, and I got the courage to tell my mom, because I believed at that point that the only person who would believe me, I would tell her.
So
And so
ninth grade, you would have been like 14 years old?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I get the courage because after this happened, everybody's telling me how great this person is in my life and how lucky I am to have him and everything. So people believe in the story. And so I rehearsed this story like, Mom, Mr. Barnes is not a nice guy. he's raping me and he's doing things to me, and so I got the courage to tell her, and he drops me off after he did what he usually does to me on a Wednesday night. And I went upstairs to tell her, and I froze. I couldn't get the words out. It was like I'm there, but the words could not come out. So I go in my room and I go, I'm going to tell her the next morning. And I lay in bed and I rehearse it again and again and get the courage to tell her. I wake up that next morning and my mother had a stroke and she wasn't functioning. She's like, she wasn't even there. And so I couldn't tell her. And then she go to the hospital. And then I went to see her and I'm crying, delivering papers. God, don't take my mom from me, because I believe she's the only one that's going to save me. And then she dies 2 weeks later.
Oh, Stuart.
And then after she dies, he says to me, well, I'm going to now be your father. And he has greater access to me because he tells everybody, I'm going to be Stuart's surrogate father. I live with my other sisters and brothers who are older, but I can't tell them because, I live this life of shame. I'm living like two lives, a life of what he is doing to me, and then a life of being actively involved in school, in sports. And so I have this channel this who am I, where am I, and what am I to do? And he ends up always being everywhere. And I remember one day I'm in church. I go to church to see my pastor, and he's in the office. And the first time he went to my church, and he's sitting in there, and it's like, oh my God, he's trying to take the church away from me. And then I froze because I wasn't wondering whether he was doing something with the pastor. And so for a moment there, I was confused and I didn't know what to do. But I didn't jump to conclusions. I didn't lose my respect for the pastor, but he tried to take that away from me. When I was dating girls, he made sure that he took me to their homes and picked me up and met their parents. So everyone in my life knew him. And because he wanted to make sure that I couldn't tell, or that he was there and they were lifting him up. So if I was to say anything, how dare I?
Yes. So you basically, because there's a lot of important threads here. So we're going to go back a little bit, Stuart, because I think it's important for our survivor family watching. You're doing great, by the way. I'm trying to keep up. That you talked about all this grooming, and I just want to point out there are 4 specific groups that get groomed, and in this case, this pedophile groomed all of them. So he groomed you through flattery, then through bribery, and then manipulation and fear, your twin brother. He groomed your foster mum by trying to impress her and take the load off her through, sharing, spending time with you. He groomed the community by being the one that was dropping you off to the Boy Scout, experiences and being involved in your life and being a father figure. And then society had grooming, or enabled him to groom as well, because what does society say, or used to say, about the Boy Scouts of America? Great organization, let your children go, it's a wonderful experience. So you see, 4 out of 4, my friend, that you didn't stand a chance. He had every aspect of that covered. And for you and I just want our survivors watching, please understand that, because there's a myth out there that grooming only occurs with the child. 100% wrong. The bigger group by far are usually the parents. Think about it.
Yeah, because I often wondered, why didn't all the adults around me see something?
Yes.
And to this day, I always ask that question, or I believe somebody saw something, but they didn't have the courage to say something or do anything. Because all they had, because I know that he lived in an apartment building, and the woman under him had to have known what's going on, the people next door to him had to know what's going on, because how do you have so many boys coming in and out of your house and so many men, and he gets divorced, and how does his wife not know what's going on? And then I blame myself for his divorce,
Of
because
course you do.
I blame myself because I'm thinking, wait a minute, he's getting divorced and I'm the reason why.
Yes.
But she didn't rescue me. She left out of the equation, but she could have left and come back in to stop him from doing what he was doing.
But you see how manipulative and clever he was? Because he had the neighbour underneath and the neighbours beside completely entranced. Most pedophiles are described, aren't they? I'm being a generalising here, but charming. Everyone thinks they're the most helpful, approachable,
Yeah, because he's in the choir, he's singing, and he's a church going person. He's a
yeah,
teacher, and
yeah,
so everyone's looking up to him as if he's doing so many things to help young people.
yeah. So I see that, and I think that's really powerful. And I had to interrupt you with that because I think that's important for survivors to realise, because there can be confusion. You know the old saying, Stuart, or it's not so old, but the saying I find to be true with us as survivors is this: we don't grow up hating the abuser, we grow up hating ourselves.
Yes.
And, and for us as survivors, self-love is the hardest thing to find, because we couldn't trust our instinct and follow it. We weren't allowed to. Yeah.
Yeah, we grow up hating ourselves, and we don't trust others.
No.
We don't let others in because we have this big secret.
Yes.
And if others find out who we really are, we lose them. And the last thing we want to do is lose someone who we believe has a positive relationship that they cultivate with us. So we're in that. Here's a person who's abusing us and doing all these things to us, that they position themselves to where we need them. And then the other group of people who aren't abusing us, we're conflicted. We really can't trust them because we fear we'll lose them. And I fear that if anyone knew or found out, then I would be persona non grata. They wouldn't believe me, because he made sure that was the case.
Yes. And to this day, you've raised another really valid point, I think, that to this day, if you put a child and an adult in front of other adults and say sexual abuse occurred, guess what? The majority of the adults will still believe the adult
Yes.
in 2023, nearly 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we know, don't we, Stuart, that the only advantage to a child ever finding the courage to speak is just so the abuse will stop.
Yes. And and one of the most horrible things happened to me with him is he introduced me to 11 other men. And so not only am I having to perform for him, I'm having to perform for other people. And one of those other men was an executive in scouting. And that person, I had to call and say to him, I'm 16 years old, that I have pain. And he said, what do you mean I have pain? I said, I have pain. And so he said, well, I described what it was, and I looked it up, and I had gonorrhea. So he says, well, meet me in New York City. Now I have to take a train from New Rochelle to New York City by myself to meet him at Grand Central Station so he can take me to his doctor. So I have to go with him to his doctor. I don't know who this doctor is in Greenwich Village, and get a shot. And the trauma of having, and these guys tell me, oh, I love you. And he goes to the doctor, all these secrets, and they're talking. And I feel like, wait a minute, I didn't know what the hell to do, because no one knows what's going on. And I fear that if I got caught going to New York at that age on a train by myself, and so it was like one of the most horrible experiences I had as a child, to be able to admit that I had gonorrhea, and then the secret of having it taken care of so we could go on and he could do what he needed to do.
So, again, that trauma for you, and you were trafficked because please share with us, what did he actually get for sharing you with other men? Because it would have been something.
What did he get?
Yeah, was it money? Was it booze? Was it pills? What did he get out for it?
Well, I think he had this circle of friends. And so he got the attention from his friends. He was able to, like he was sort of like the ringleader in that sense, like he was grooming, not only he was grooming these other men.
Yes.
And giving them what they wanted. And probably he was working to where they couldn't tell either, and creating more safety around him to what he was doing.
So, what a master manipulator. And Stuart, I hope you're not shocked to realise that you were trafficked, even if they came to his home. I'm so
Yeah, because then I had to go to their homes.
yeah.
And so he did traffic me, or you call it prostitute me out. And so how can I tell that? Because it gets worse and worse. It's like, okay, we start with him, and then there's other layers, and then I end up just confused, or more pushed in the corner of silence and fear that if anyone was to find out what was happening to me, then I would lose everything I had.
Yes. And therein lies the answer, and I'm not going to let you off the hook. Repeat after me. I was a child of 11.
I was a child of 11. Yeah. You mean 11 abusers?
Who 11 years old. Sorry, but what power did you have?
No, I had no power. I had no power.
So let's
I had no power, but also I feared rejection because my parents gave me away, or my parents gave me up. So now I have this notion. I grew up when I found out I'm in a foster, so I have this notion of rejection. And so if someone gives me attention, or someone puts a hand out to help me, what am I going to do? So
grab it and hold on
I used to blame myself. So what child would not want to be loved, to be cared, to be treated special? Every child deserves that and needs that. And for a child not to have it, it's not a healthy thing. So here's a person in my life who I had this void, who manipulated the situation and took advantage of me so they could give me what I needed, but nothing was wrong with me. It was every child's, wish to have someone to love. And so he took advantage of all that, but he knew how to pick us out.
Of course he did. So I'm going to stop you right there, because we're coming to the end of part 1, believe it or not. Who knew you were such a chatty Cathy? No. So look, Stuart, the point is this, just as we're finishing up part 1, as survivors of this horror, we naturally take responsibility or assume that it was our fault. And the reason we do that is because as children, we need the adult. We can't navigate life without an adult. So it's no surprise we can't afford to turn them bad or make them wrong. The only option is to turn it within. Does that make sense? So I think for survivors, yes, if you're holding on to any self-responsibility or blame, stop it now. And Stuart would support me in that. So look, absolutely, lovely ones, just as we're coming to the end of part 1. Wow, wait till part 2. Isn't he great? Hey, you're welcome. No, seriously though, you guys, he's already talked about how when he looked at this person that was abusing, who then very quickly, it seems, then got 11 other men involved, one of whom was an executive of the Boy Scouts of America. Really, we're going to come back to this. But in the meantime, always know, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.